Welcome to another episode of Miami Cop Talk. Visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com. With us is Robert Asencio and Raul Correa discussing the latest issues in public safety, law enforcement, what's in the news with invited guests. And again, visit us, help us grow our audience. We are one community, one voice. And let's get ready to start another episode of Miami Cop Talk. I'm Raul Correa, and with me is my partner and co-host, Robert Asencio. We want to thank everyone that's listening and been supporting the show. Robert, you want to say hi to the folks?
Yes. Hope everyone had a great Mother's Day. For all of you mothers who we did not have an opportunity to, wish you a holiday. We wish you a belated Happy Mother's Day and hope you have a great month and even better year, as you said last week, Raul.
Well, we have a good show for you today. We have with us a true law enforcement professional who recently started a company by the name of Talon Protection Group. And we're going to go ahead and introduce this individual who knows a lot about law enforcement, knows a lot about the South Florida community. I'm going to let him give you his background and tell you his story. We have JP Guillot. For those, he mentioned Olga Guillot, and that's how you pronounce his last name. For those of you that know Spanish music and Cuban culture, JP, welcome to Miami Cop Talk.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me in the show. A great fan. I've seen your show many times. Thank you for having me. And happy Mother's Day. Yesterday was a great day for everyone. So congratulations and happy Mother's Day. I'm JP Guillot. I'm entering my 26th year of law enforcement. It's been a long road, but I love it every single day. I'm excited to continue working this fantastic field. I oversee the police academy and also oversee the active shooter program for our department here in South Florida. And ready to get into it, man. I'm excited.
Great. Welcome, JP, as well. Listen, we wanted to have you on because, as we've seen in the news recently, right, and playing out throughout the country, there's a lot of scrutiny about police work. There's certainly a lot of second guessing when it comes to when officer goes hands-on or contact shootings. And, we know that most officer-involved shootings are good shootings, but it's those that are the bad shoots. It's those that are bad uses of force that have really brought this issue to contention, where now we have a certain segment of society that has really gone after police work and really painted all police officers. We try to paint them with the same brush. So having you on as a police trainer, a person who's been in law enforcement for 26 years, a person who's looking at the next level of their life, a person who's training police officers, can you really touch on how training has changed and give those viewers that really don't know about police work a little inside view that otherwise they would not have? Can you do that for us?
Yeah, great question. I think that like with everything in our life, things evolve, right? So I remember when I first got onto the department, we didn't have tasers, not because the department didn't have it, it's just it didn't exist, right? So we went from hands-on, like in the 1900s and whatever, to impact weapons like an expandable or a PR-24 or a stick. Yeah. And then now it evolved to the expandable batons, which is an ASP. And then it went to the pepper spray, a little year, further on. And then eventually we got to the taser, and then now there's different generation of tasers. So everything evolves in police work. And I think that it's important to keep moving towards a direction where we're one with the public, and we understand that our mission is to work with the public and understand that the police department is the public. It's like there's a quote, the police is the public is the police. Police officers are people who understand. Police officers come from a segment of our community. We're all part of the community. You guys are former police officers. You're enjoying your retirement and you're doing a great thing now to educate the public. But I'm off today, but in a few hours I'm gonna go to Publix and get my lunch, or I'm gonna go have a run around my neighborhood and go to the mailbox and talk to my neighbors. Like, I'm a human. I'm a person from the community. So police departments are made up from our communities, and nobody wants to take a life unless we really have to. But the involvement of our training, including de-escalation training, very huge. There's different ways of de-escalating situations. There's a huge segment of our community that's suffering from mental illness. How do we deal with that? So, on top of all the things that the police officers are tasked with, now will become, street psychologists. So there's coronavirus came on, and we have a lot of unemployment. So there's millions of mentally ill individuals. A quick stat that I have for you guys: there's 40 million, and I can give you the research on it. 40 million individuals suffer from mental illness in our country. 10 million are serious. They suffer from really serious mental illness. But a shocking stat is 56% of them do not even take medication. So who ends up dealing with these individuals that need help is usually first responders, either fire rescue or police officers. So we need training more now than ever to make sure that we're dealing with situations like this. There's 2 videos that came out last week where a police department, City Miami Police Department, was able to save 2 individuals' lives. One was hanging from a bridge. The other one was committing suicide. He was standing or sitting on top of a roof of a building, and the officers were able to de-escalate those situations, place him safely into custody, and take him to a medical facility to help them. So that's one of many examples that I can tell you about right now in our community that police officers are doing to make our community safe. But we need training, and we continue training. So de-escalation training, to answer your question, and implicit bias training to make sure that we are fair across the board with every single person we meet, that our law enforcement tactics are impartial, right? That we treat everybody with fairness and with trust. And that's the way we build public trust.
Well, JP, let me ask you a question, and I appreciate what you've been sharing with us and those stories that you mentioned about the officers saving those individuals that were trying to commit suicide and whatnot. I saw that on the news, and that tends to be the norm in law enforcement. They're out there helping the community on a daily basis. Unfortunately, there's a segment of our population and we've talked about it on the show, politics gets involved in police work, and it doesn't. Politics and policing don't, set well, especially when politicians are trying to, score points for certain segments of the population. There's that sentiment that we've all heard, that defund the police, which is a delusional view. Seen that. I also believe in fairy tales and unicorn. That's not going to happen. If anything, it's going to, be the opposite of that. And we've talked about it offline with Minneapolis and other agencies that have gone that route and now are trying to make up for it and are even hiring more police than they had before. So the public needs to be educated, and I know that social media does that. That's what we're doing here on MiamiCopTalk. We're trying to educate the public. We're trying to educate everyone. But from your perspective, from a police professional, from a police trainer, what is something that you would want the public to know as far as, I know that there's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of things that, internally within police work that the public is unaware of. What would you want the public to know? Because you have those that are going to hate, because haters will hate. But when someone needs assistance, they call the police. Those same haters are the ones that pick up the phone and call the police when things happen. So what would you say to the public to try to change the sentiment? I know, again, offline, we've talked about things, if you want to bring up things that have affected law enforcement, Ferguson and whatnot. So what would you tell the community and the public at large as far as that hate sentiment towards the police?
Well, I would say that first and foremost, I think that's, like you mentioned, very, very small segment of our community thinks like that. Here in South Florida, at least, or in Dade County and Broward, we did not see that segment of the community because I was out there last year. Very small. There's about 2.7 or 3 million people in Dade County. And if you look at demonstrations, very small.
JP, we lost your audio. Try it again.
All right. You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. So there's a 2.7 million or 3 million people in Dade County. And when you look at the demonstrations or people that cause trouble, I would say fewer than 100 or 100 or 200, right? So that's a good sign, I think. Most people out there support the police. You'd be surprised. I've been eating with the guys out and about, and people just pay for our dinner or pay for our lunch. It's very it's a little bit embarrassing. Like, man, it's you want to know who it is so you can say, but they don't even want to know. They don't. It's just surprise, right? They pay for our lunch. They thank us. So there's a lot of great people out there, and so I don't want to say that the public doesn't trust or doesn't support us. We just hear about the ones they don't, right? So we don't hear about the ones they do, and I think that's just the media playing that card. But if I gotta say something, videos are very funny. Or videos are only show a little part of what really happens. I would say let's wait until everything comes out. There's a lot of situations where officers don't have the information, right? They're going based on the information that they have at the time, and then later on the court proceedings or take an attorney a year to uncover everything that happened in that situation, and the officers are not privy to that when they're making decisions, right? Well, they're judged on the reasonableness of the situation. So what a reasonable officer would do with the information he had at the time, that's how officers are judged. So let's give them that due diligence or due process to uncover, and if something went wrong or they acted with outside the parameters of their legal standard, then we should be punished, right? We should be held accountable. But let's give the officers that due process, and let's see what happened, because in a split second video coverage that you see on Channel 10 today or whatever channel, it's hard to make an informed decision. We don't know what happened before leading up to the situation, and so I would say just let's give the officer their due process. And again, if they're found to be doing something that was unlawful, then they should be held accountable. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
I have a comment, right? So last week I'm watching TV. We saw the tourist on Miami Beach. Now we know that Miami Beach has had a swell of violence, say within the last year. Certainly during spring break was a period that was quite chaotic. We saw the guy running after spring break. We saw a guy on TV firing his firearm down indiscriminately down the street. Now last week, what I'm getting to the point is that I saw a video of a gentleman that gets a couple gets off the bus, and a man's on the bus bench, having definitely break from reality, because he sits. You can see him singing or talking to himself, but at the end of the point being is that as the tourist gets off the bus, he attacks the male and starts beating on her, and I believe he hit the female as well. Talk to me about the officers on the road and the level of violence they're seeing for those that have mental health that are really causing these encounters.
Yeah, this is something that I think we talked about. So we had something called the Ferguson effect. So that comes from Ferguson, Missouri, where the riots of Mr. Brown that was shot and killed in Ferguson, Missouri, and then you saw the lack of support from law enforcement officials, management, chiefs and staff, and from the elected officials. And so if the officers don't feel like they're being supported by either the community or by their staff, they're going to do something called depolicing, right? So depolicing means that you're just going to respond in a reactive fashion, not in a proactive fashion. So there are segments or cities in our country, obviously there's high crime area. There's a lot of gun violence. And in those areas, like just to name a few, you got Chicago, New York, Houston, segments of Miami or LA, Minneapolis, St. Louis, Missouri. You have a lot of gun violence, Baltimore, Philadelphia. And so we need officers who are proactive, meaning let's stop the crime before it happens by either doing investigative stops, stop and frisk, which was taken away in New York, and we've seen the rise of homicides that's spreading out. So the depolicing now, there's a term called Minneapolis effect, where we're seeing pockets of big cities right now as we speak. This is not a fantasy world. Right now, if you do the research out there, you'll see triple numbers of homicide, 100%, 195%. I'll give you one. St. Louis, Missouri has hit a 50-year high in homicides this year. 50-year high. And that's just one example of many. So depolicing doesn't work. We need to support our police officers, especially in the same cities that these things are happening. The only people are affected are the people who live in those inner cities, and they need the police. And so another example, in Portland, I'm sorry, in Portland, but also in Minneapolis, last month alone, the city officials moved to dismantle the police department. This didn't get a lot of notoriety in the news, but they actually voted to replace the police department with a public safety department. Know what the difference is? I think it's the same, it's just a name change. But how does that affect the morale in the police department? Now we have 200 officers leaving that police department. They went from 800 to 600. Look at their stats right now. Look at their homicide. Look at their violent crimes. It's out of control. So we have to be more responsible, I think, as overall leaders, political leaders, and law enforcement leaders. And the decisions that we make today are going to affect the public tomorrow. So to make sure that we're making the right decisions and not just knee-jerk reactions.
We're talking with JP Guillot from Talon Protection Group. I have a question for JP, and just to go off what you were just saying. You're absolutely right. There was in the news this weekend, New York City, Times Square. At one point, it was considered one of the safest places in the United States. It got more cameras in Times Square than anywhere else. It had more police officers in Times Square than anywhere else. And someone had the tenacity to commit a shooting in Times Square. So obviously the depolicing you're mentioning is happening, and we need to try to correct that, change course in this country. And I believe that those that watch Miami Cop Talk and listen to our podcast support the police. We back the blue on Miami Cop Talk. But I want to ask you a question. There was a recent incident, and I know some of our celebrities in Hollywood and athletes have got involved. A young lady with a knife, Bryant. And she was shot by a Columbus, Ohio police officer. If I got the city correct, I think what ends up happening is people don't understand, and I've said this on the show. If you're following policy, procedures, guidelines, and state statute, you can question the actions of the officer. But again, if you're following policy, procedures, guidelines, and state statute, then the officer acted accordingly. I've given my opinion. I thought it was a good shoot. But if you look at what happened, which is, again, going back to technology, and as part of what your company, Talon Protection Group, you're on the cutting edge of training and whatnot. We had a body cam video released within 24 hours. And if that doesn't show good faith from a law enforcement perspective to tell the community, listen, we have nothing to hide. I've never seen that before. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that incident, what you think. How technology played into that. You had body camera footage within 24 hours being released. Share a little bit about your opinions on that incident.
Yeah, so the Ma'Khia Bryant unfortunate incident that happened in Columbus, Ohio earlier this year. For those who don't know, it was a large fight where 911 dispatchers were called to the scene of a fight involving someone with a knife that was stabbing other people. Police officer gets there, the first officer on the scene, attempts to break the fight. He observes a female holding a large knife, attempting to stab someone else, actively trying to kill someone else in his presence. The officer discharged his firearm and shot the young lady who passed away. Right, so very unfortunate situation. Obviously, no police officer wakes up saying, I want to kill someone today. I want to purposely do anything. Officers want to go home and they want to serve the community. Without that officer is going to have to live with that for the rest of his life, right? I guarantee you that it's going to be tough. He's going to be in some kind of crisis for a while. And so when we look at that incident, a lot of people. So we have the president or political leaders and Hollywood actors that don't know what police officers do and their training and why. I think muddy, right, or distort the truth, and that's why the public sometimes doesn't understand, because we're getting conflicting information from people who are supposed to be leaders, right? So when you have elected officials from the highest level saying that we should shoot somebody who has a knife in the arm, right, or in the leg, or use a taser in a situation like that, the public then starts to second guess the police officers, right? Why didn't you do this if this is what these people are saying, right? So if the highest level officials are saying that we can do that, why are we doing it? And so, yeah, that's bizarre to me, right?
So I have a question for you. With the recent high level of media attention, because we can't call it anything else, media attention to police shoots, do you see the move in law enforcement moving to less lethal or any other types of disarmament type engaging scenarios?
Yeah, we do that already. Yeah, so if I invite your viewers to go to YouTube and see hundreds of videos where officers neutralize or apprehend subject without using force. There's beanbags, there's shotgun beanbags that we can shoot from a distance, and you can see a lot of videos where this happens. But there are certain situations that are fast evolving, that the windows that you can use that kind of weapons close very rapidly. And when somebody's actively seeing a situation where they can die, the police officers has no choice. It's not the choice of the officer, is the choice of the offender doing that at the time, where it forces the officer to take lethal action to stop and save a life, right? So the officer took a life to save a life, which is, again, I keep saying it's unfortunate. The officer did not want to do that. I can guarantee you that, but we do that. Law enforcement do that, just depending on the situation, right? And that situation there, really hard to do. If you look at a video on YouTube, LAPD encounters a subject with a knife or a machete, and they try to use beanbags to disarm him, and the beanbags didn't work. And what happened? That the subject turned around, took a female hostage, and then the officers were forced to shoot. Unfortunately, they shot the hostage and the hostage taker. So it's out there, right? It just depends on the situation. Is very, very fluid, and they couldn't do it.
Thank you.
Well, JP, as we're getting ready to end the show, I want to thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and you're absolutely right. The level of force has to be consistent with what they're confronting. Law enforcement has beanbags, like you said, some munition, gas, you name it. But if you're seeing deadly force that's going to potentially occur, then unfortunately the only other remedy for law enforcement is to use deadly force in return. And that is an unfortunate situation. And I appreciate you being on Miami Cop Talk. Listen to MiamiCopTalk.com on all media platforms, social media platforms, and on podcasts. I have JP Guillot from Talon Protection Group. And if people need to get a hold of you and want to share, want to see what your company's all about, want to reach out to you for training, if you want to share really briefly before we end the show, what kind of training you offer to those individuals out there, please provide the information on where people can reach out to you.
Yeah, so on Instagram is Talon Protection, 305-614-4077, 305-614-4077. I just started that mainly. I started doing concealed weapons permits for civilians so they can protect themselves, and I saw the level of training wasn't there. So if you're gonna go out there and carry a gun, which we promote, it's our constitutional right, make sure that you're responsible enough to understand how to carry a gun. Don't hurt yourself, number one, right? And understand the parameters of your responsibility. You have responsibility. It's a privilege, right? To have one. It's a right, but it's also, it can be taken away. So understand the laws, understand, and you have to train. It's like the level of training to get a concealed permit license is just unbelievable to me, the level of non-training, right? So people get permits, they don't know how to carry a gun, they don't know how to shoot it. So get a gun, yeah, but understand how to protect yourself. So we have a group of guys that are really great at training. So we train civilians, law enforcement, in the use of firearms. And give us a call and we can set something up.
Excellent. Thank you, JP. And again, it's been JP Guillot from Talon Protection Group. We want to thank you for listening to this episode of Miami Cop Talk. Again, listen to us at MiamiCopTalk.com. We have our platform there where you can go to all the Spotify and all those other good platforms out there to listen to the show. If you have any information, any comments, you want to reach out to us, it's 305 at MiamiCopTalk.com.
You have been listening to Miami Cop Talk. We hope you have enjoyed this episode and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com to get the latest on all our broadcasts. We want to thank our partners and sponsors that have made Miami Cop Talk possible. And on behalf of Robert Asencio and Raul Correa, we want to thank you for listening to Miami Cop Talk. Stay connected and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com.